Hey guys, Moneyman300, got another tuning in depth video here. This time we are going to move on to the brakes. So there's some interesting things about brakes and the terminology that they use here, and it actually makes it seem a little bit backwards, and to me is backwards, but I'll go into that. So there's two things that make up your brakes. By the way, you have to have in your platform and handling, you need to have race brakes on in order for them to be adjustable. You always want your brakes to be adjustable. It's a great thing to adjust. The defaults as you come in here, you have two things. You have your balance, which is your bias to the front to the rear, which is 50. 50 in the middle means you have even bias front to rear. And then your brake pressure, which is you can adjust to so that you don't have to pull the trigger as far, or if you're using a wheel, to use as much of your foot pedal. And you're going to adjust this differently based on if you're using ABS or not. I do not use ABS, so I don't know all that much about adjusting for ABS, other than I believe you generally want to bump up your braking force a little bit, but I'll talk through what I do and how I tune them. The first thing I want to cover is that what you see here seems backwards. So, and what I mean by that is actually moving it this way, which you would think would apply more brake pressure to the rear, is actually applying more brake pressure to the front. And I'm going to demonstrate that real quick, just so that everybody understands which way you want to adjust the brakes. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run these all the way to what you would think would be the front. So, and then I'm going to apply this and hop out on the track. And I have a car that's a super twitchy, high-powered rear-wheel drive car, which makes it easy to demonstrate this a little bit here. So let's go out here. So let's get on So first thing I noticed there, I hit the brakes there, and I don't know if you could tell, but the back immediately locked up. Let me switch back here. Oh, get going here. Get us going here, and then I'm going to stop. So that is the back, and I can tell even right there. You can see the smoke coming off the back tires. That's the back brakes locking up. And when I do this, I'm not going anywhere. I can't even. So that tells me that the back brakes are the one locked. This is a high horsepower rear-wheel drive. I should be spinning the wheels right now. So, oops, get back out of that. And now let's run this thing the other way. So, oh, not my tire pressure. And the brakes. Here we go. So now let's do this. So that's backwards, right? If you're looking at this, you would think you'd have all of your bias to the back, but you don't. Or all of it to the front. You know, I'm sliding this over to what you would think would be the front, when in actuality it actually applied all the brake bias to the rear. So let's do this the other way. This looks like, to me, it would be the rear, and what you're going to see here in this demonstration is that it is actually to the front. So we'll go right back into this. I'll apply my brakes. So now you can see, now we're burning them out, smoking our back tires. Front, see the front's not moving at all here. All right, so the brake bias is what I would call backwards, or maybe they meant it to be that way. Maybe it's the way that the way that it reads. But I read it several times, and it looks to me like it's just backwards. So, having said that, typically you want a little bit more bias towards the front. A couple of different reasons there. Number one, there's usually a little bit more weight in the front of the car. But the second real reason is your momentum and inertia when you hit the brakes is putting more weight in the front. You're shifting your weight to the front when you put the brakes, so you need a little bit more, not a lot, but you need a little bit more brake bias to the front. So let's take this back. And so in previous Forza games, a typical setting would be 46 to 49, to 50, somewhere over in here, maybe 47. That was a pretty typical setting for me. Found out early on that I was getting behaviors that didn't seem right. It was creating some oversteer situations, and I'll talk about that and demonstrate that in a minute. So instead, if you want to put more towards the towards the front, and I actually do go this way. I like to, let me rephrase it. I like to have just a little bit to the rear, so that it can create just a little bit of oversteer when you're going into a turn. So, by going 52, 53, this is actually adding a little bit more brake bias to the rear. I like that. And I had 47, 48 on the other side in the past, because I like to have just just a little bit, a touch of oversteer moving in. And I'll show you the differences there. So let's say we go back over here and we put it all the way to the front, right? We have established that that is the front, not the rear. So now we have all of our brake bias to the front. So now I'm going to go out here and we're going to drive. And this car is a beast without traction control, so we'll get to somewhere where I'm actually going to hit the brakes. Probably should have done that a second ago, but yeah, see, I hit the brakes there, and I don't know if you could tell, but the car just flat out, you can't turn the car while you're, you know, while I have that much brake pressure on there. I'm just not. It just, you get super understeer when you're trying to brake and turn, you're trying to trail brake. Right there, yeah, I just flat out can't turn the car while I'm under braking position. So that's the behavior that you get when you have too much brake bias towards the front. So I'm going to drive her back up here a little bit. Get that reverse in this Aston Martin 177. Pretty cool car. Not the best car, track car, but kind of fun to drive. I usually going to put traction control on this thing, so I can make the bias go to the rear by hitting that overspin. Let's back up here. All right, so we're going to stop it there. We're going to go in, and I will change the brakes, and we're going to go the other way. We're going to put it all the way to the rear, aka the front, in Forza 5. Whoa. Let's get going here. Look at this car. Alright, so when I hit the brakes down here, yep. So it's immediate. It's basically like pulling the handbrake, right? All of your brake bias is to the rear, and that's what you get. So now that you know what the extremes are, now you can tune for that. So we'll go back in, go to my tuning setup, and put in what I would normally like. So I'm typically in about 52, 53. If I find that through trial braking I am losing the back end and things like that, then you can start to come back this way to 50, 50, even in the 40s. So whatever works well. You're trying to get even. You're trying not to lock up the brakes when you brake under there. So, but to accompany that, you have your braking force. This is all feel. In my opinion, the higher you can run it and not lock up the brakes, the better. So if I look at this, and I don't even look at the braking distance over here. Some people will adjust based on braking distance. I don't mess with that. I do it all by feel, but we'll look here. 100 to 0 is 246 feet. What happens if I put this at 200? So 237. So technically it's less there. And if I come back somewhere in the middle, 140, 243. And if I go back, well, I don't remember what it was already, 100. So, yeah, so it's kind of all over the place. So 246, 237. So technically speaking, if you could do this at 200%, your braking distance would be less. Now that all depends on what your trigger finger is like. So you have to, and it's almost like your throttle response. If you can do quarter and half trigger, I personally like a little higher, like that right there. And I'm trying to feel, not bad. Seeing if that 53 is right. And really what I'm testing for is, am I kicking the back end out as soon as I hit, or does everything feel even? But you can run it as high as 200. A lot of people maybe wouldn't even try that, but it feels pretty good to me on this car. It's really not that drastic once you get used to it. I don't like to ever pull the brake down more than halfway, though. I just like to tap on it. So to me, that's a quicker way to stop, if you can learn to do it that way. But it's a preference thing. So you're probably going to want to be somewhere higher than 100. And you're going to have to test this out a little bit more if you're using ABS. I would recommend getting away from ABS if you are using it. It really doesn't take that much to get used to. Once you do, just using progressive braking, it's much better. So, but typically you might start out, if you're just getting rid of ABS, you could take ABS and go to 90. you know, because you may be used to just jamming the trigger down. So take your brake bias down a little bit, and then as you get better, bump it, just keep bumping it up until you know, essentially you could go all the way to 200. A lot of people I'll see like to be in this 140 range, but it's really about feel. It's really about what makes you faster on the track, helps you with your lap times. But I think if you learn, number one, to turn ABS off, and number two, to start bumping that brake force up, understand your brake bias and that it's backwards based on the way that it reads here, you will definitely improve your lap times, get better in multiplayer, single player, whatever it is that you're playing. Another thing is, if you read in here, right here, this turn in affects braking distance. Adjusting the brake balance rearward increases oversteer under braking, and we showed that that's actually the opposite. So increasing it this way actually increases understeer during braking. Going this way is going to introduce oversteer under braking. So even the wording is backwards. So I'm going to wrap it up with that. Hope you guys learned something there. I think it's important. Braking is actually more important than maybe people give it credit for. Getting a good balanced braking, you can really shave seconds off of lap times by getting your brakes set up properly and shortening your braking distance. So I'm going to stop it with that one. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Later.